They took her badge, slid a cardboard box into her arms, and told her to clear out like she'd never mattered. 20 years of saving strangers erased in one sterile HR sentence. Fired and walking home in the rain, Erin Wallace tried to swallow the same question you've probably felt in your own life. What do you do when doing the right thing costs you everything? Downtown San Diego kept moving without her. Trolley bells, headlights smeared in wet asphalt. Her shoes soaked through her husband's photo pressed to her chest so it wouldn't get ruined. Then the street started to tremble. Puddles shivered. Windows rattled. 2 Black Hawk helicopters dropped into the intersection, and a soldier shouted, "Where's the nurse? Stay to the end, and you'll see what power looks like when it finally answers to truth." If you're watching this, like the video and comment where you're tuning in from. That shout hit Erin like a fist, not because it was loud, but because it carried the same cold certainty she had heard in a smaller room with quieter lights. The kind of certainty that decides who matters and who gets erased. Her fingers tightened around the soggy cardboard box as the rotor wash slapped rain into her face, and for a split second, she saw the other room again. The one where no rain fell, where the air smelled like recycled antiseptic, and where a career could be ended with a manicured tap on a folder. The Human Resources Office at Riverside Mercy was tucked behind a hallway no patients ever saw. No windows, no art on the walls. Just a framed poster about workplace respect that curled at the corners like it had given up. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a steady irritation, the sound settling into the skull until it felt personal. Erin Wallace sat at the edge of a gray chair that had absorbed years of bad news. Her hands rested in her lap, folded as if she were praying. She was not praying. She was trying to keep the tremor out of her fingers. Those hands had threaded IV lines into veins that barely existed. They had clamped bleeding arteries with nothing but pressure and instinct. They had held down panicking shoulders in the middle of a code, palm's firm voice low like a lighthouse in a storm. Now those same hands felt like someone else's, useless on her own skin. Across from her sat Diane Caldwell, HR director, hair smooth and severe, a pearl necklace pinned at her throat like a collar. Diane did not look at Erin right away. She looked at the open folder, eyes moving over paper as if paper had feelings. Beside Diane sat Dr. Pierce Langdon, chief of surgery, posture, relaxed, suit tailored under his white coat. His stethoscope rested around his neck like a medal. Erin stared at that stethoscope and remembered how it dangled against his chest while he talked on his phone. Not listening, talking. Diane turned a page. The sound was small. In the silence, it rang. "Insubordination," Diane said, voice level, practiced. "Violation of chain of command. Unprofessional conduct during a critical event. Creating a hostile work environment." Erin blinked once. Her throat tasted faintly of metal. She had not had water since the last trauma rolled in. Her tongue felt too big for her mouth. "I saved the patient," Erin said. Diane's eyes lifted, then slow appraising. Not cruel, not kind, simply measuring. "The patient is not the only consideration," Diane replied. "We have protocols." Erin turned toward Langdon. He was watching her like she was a problem that had finally solved itself. Langdon's smile appeared. It was polite. It did not reach his eyes. "You escalated without authorization," he said. "You acted outside your scope. You undermined medical authority." Erin's jaw tightened. She heard a monitor in her memory. Rapid beeps. Then the wet, choking silence between them. "He was dying," Erin said. Langdon's eyebrows lifted as if she had missed the point on purpose. "Which is why we have a hierarchy," he said. "To prevent impulsive decisions. To protect patients from well-meaning mistakes." "Well-meaning," Erin repeated, and her voice sharpened. "He was blue." Diane tapped the folder with a fingernail. Tap, tap, tap. A metronome for her patients. "Ms. Wallace." Diane said, "This is not a debate." Erin's gaze snapped back to Diane. "If I hadn't pushed the epi when I did," Erin said, "that child would be in the morgue." Langdon exhaled through his nose, a soft sound of annoyance. He shifted in his chair, crossing one leg over the other. You took it upon yourself to medicate a pediatric patient with a complicating cardiac history, he said, while ignoring a directive to wait. A directive, Aaron echoed. You were on the phone. Langdon's eyes narrowed, warning in the change. I was consulting risk management, he said. You were covering yourself, Aaron shot back. He was 8 years old. He could not breathe. Diane's tone did not change. It never changed. You are a nurse, Diane said. You execute orders. You do not override attending physicians. Aaron felt heat rise behind her eyes. She forced it down. Anger was useful in a trauma bay. Anger in an HR office was a trap. My job is to keep people alive, Aaron said quietly. Langdon leaned forward, forearms on the table, the move deliberate. He wanted the room smaller. Your job, Langdon said, is to do what you are told. You pushed past me to access the crash cart. You created a hostile environment in front of staff and family. Aaron stared at him, disbelieving. She could still see the mother's face, mouth wide in a scream that had no sound anymore, like the world had cut her audio. I created a heartbeat, Aaron said. The words slipped out before she could soften them. Langdon's expression flattened. Diane closed the folder, the slap of it final. The decision has been made, Diane said. Dr. Langdon has formally requested termination effective immediately. Your access to the medical record system is being revoked as we speak. Security will escort you to your locker. Erin's shoulders held still. She waited for her body to do something dramatic, to stand up, to collapse, to beg. It did none of those things. Her heart beat hard and steady, the kind of beat she trusted in other people. She wished she could trust it in herself. You are making a mistake, Aaron said. Langdon stood and buttoned his coat with slow precision. Each button clicked into place like a seal. The only mistake, he said, was thinking you were indispensable. He walked out first, leaving the room as if he were late for something important, as if this were a small administrative errand on his day. Diane did not follow. She reached for a phone, already moving on. Aaron rose from the chair. Her legs felt heavy, like her bones had been filled with wet sand. She stepped into the hallway and found the security guard waiting. Cal Johnson stood with his hands clasped in front of him. He was in his late 50s, broad shoulders, tired eyes. He had seen everything in a place like Riverside Mercy. He had watched families fall apart at the entrance and had walked staff out after mistakes that could not be undone. He was good at it, which meant he hated it. I'm sorry, Aaron, he said. She managed a small nod, like she was accepting condolences at a funeral. In a way, she was. It's not your call, she said. Cal shifted his weight, glancing down the corridor where nurses moved between rooms. The hospital breathed around them, machines and footsteps and muffled voices. I can walk behind you, he said quietly. Make it look less official. Aaron almost laughed, almost. Thanks, she said, but everyone knows. He did not argue. He simply stayed near, careful not to crowd her, as if proximity itself might bruise. They moved toward the lockers. Aaron passed the trauma bays and felt something in her chest tighten. This was her home in the ugliest, truest sense. She knew the rhythm of this place. She knew the way the air changed when an ambulance radioed in a burn. She knew the sound of a ventilator alarming and the exact pitch that meant, fix this now. She knew which nurse could find a vein in a stone, and which resident would panic, and which attending would go quiet and deadly competent. She also knew the look people gave you when you became a warning. Jessica at triage looked down at her screen, like it suddenly mattered more than a human being. Marco pretended to read an order sheet. One of the newer nurses, barely a year out of school, caught Aaron's eyes and flinched away like she had been burned. Aaron did not blame them. Fear was contagious in a hospital. It spread faster than any virus. At the lockers, Aaron opened hers and stared. For a long moment, she did not move. Her locker was a small square of metal, but it held the evidence of her life. The edges of her identity lived in there between shifts. Cal held out a cardboard box already assembled. Aaron took it without speaking. She started emptying the locker. The movements felt surreal, like packing someone else's things. A stethoscope with worn tubing, a pen light, trauma shears with a nick in the blade from cutting a seatbelt too close, a half-used bottle of ibuprofen, a small roll of tape, a folded set of spare scrubs, a cracked coffee mug with faded letters that once made her laugh during the worst nights. Nurses run this place. Then the frame. Erin's fingers paused on the photo of Luke. Her husband's smile was frozen in a sunlit moment that felt impossible now. He had been a Coast Guard rescue swimmer once. That was how she met him. A patient brought in after a boat accident, Luke arriving with salt in his hair, eyes, sharp hands steady. He used to say, "Fear was just information. It tells you what matters." Luke had been gone 3 years, and grief still came in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes strong enough to knock her down without warning. She slid the frame carefully into the box and pressed it deep under the scrubs to keep it safe. Cal cleared his throat, then stopped as if he could swallow the sound back down. Erin shut the locker and turned the key. The click echoed in her ears. Cal offered his arm not to hold her, but to guide. Erin shook her head. She carried her own box. They walked toward the emergency entrance, a route she had taken 1,000 times. Usually, she walked it fast, heading in coffee and one-hand badge, swinging mind already sorting priorities. Now her footsteps slowed, each one heavy with the awareness that she had nowhere she needed to be. At the doors, the blast of cold air hit her face. Outside, the sky was a solid lid of gray. Rain fell in an ugly drizzle that soaked everything slowly as if the city had all day to drown. Cal paused at the threshold, reluctant. "Take care of yourself," he said. Erin looked at him. The lines around his eyes were deeper than they used to be. Everyone looked older after the last few years. "You too," Erin said. "Get your blood pressure checked. You look like you live on vending machine coffee." Cal let out a short breath that was almost a laugh. The doors slid open. Erin stepped outside. The rain hit her immediately. It plastered her hair to her forehead and soaked the shoulders of her scrubs. She pulled the box closer to her chest, shielding Luke's photo with her body, as if her ribs could keep the world from ruining it. The doors hissed shut behind her. The sound was final. The hospital was warm behind that glass. She was not. She stood on the sidewalk and tried to make her thoughts line up like orders on a chart. Rent, the car, groceries, electricity. The words came in a rush, then scattered. Her car was in a shop in National City with a transmission problem she could not afford to fix. She had planned to pick up an extra shift to cover it. She had planned a lot of things. She stared down the street toward the trolley station. It was not far. 6 blocks. Nothing in a city that ate distance for breakfast. She took a step. Her shoes were already wet. Her socks turned cold against her skin. The box grew heavier with every pace, as if the things inside were gaining weight now that they were all she had left. San Diego moved around her like she was invisible. A man in a suit jogged past umbrella angled perfectly. A couple under a shared hood laughed at something she could not hear. A delivery truck splashed dirty water onto the curb and did not slow. Erin walked slowly, mind-looping back to the moment that had detonated her life. It replayed with brutal clarity, like security footage you cannot stop watching. The pediatric bay had been loud with panic. The kind of noise that does not sound like sound anymore, just pressure. Mason Rivera, 8 years old, sat upright on the gurney, at first, his eyes, wide hands clawing at his throat. His lips had gone gray, then blue. His breaths came in thin, wet pulls like he was trying to drink air through a straw. His mother, Elena, was on her knees beside the bed, begging, praying, bargaining with anyone who would listen. "Please," she kept saying. "Please, please, please." Erin had been the one who took Elena's wrist, felt the frantic pulse, and said, "Look at me. He is here. We are here. We are moving." She had said it because she needed to hear it too. Langdon stepped in with his white coat and his authority, and for a heartbeat, Erin felt relief. A surgeon. A leader. Someone who would act. Instead, Langdon stared at the chart on the screen like it was a puzzle. "Bee sting," the resident said quickly. "History of mild asthma. Possible murmur noted last year. Mother says he was told to follow with cardiology. No follow-up on record." Langdon held up a finger and pulled out his phone. Erin watched his thumb move as he dialed. She watched the phone go to his ear. Langdon said into the phone. This is Langdon. Pediatric patient. Probable anaphylaxis. Chart indicates cardiac complication. I need confirmation on dosing protocol and liability for epinephrine administration with suspected cardiac history. Erin's head snapped toward him. Doctor, she said. He needs epi now. Langdon held the phone tight against his eyes on the monitor. Give him oxygen. Start fluids. Prepare albuterol, he said, not looking at Erin. We have to be careful. Careful. Erin heard the word and felt something cold move through her. Mason's chest rose, then stalled. His eyes rolled slightly, the whites flashing as his body fought for air. Erin looked at the crash cart. Doctor, she said again, louder. He's closing. Langdon glanced at her as if she were interrupting something important. I said wait, he replied. We need authorization. Authorization. The word did not belong in that room. It belonged in billing. It belonged in paperwork. It did not belong in the space between a child and breath. Erin felt the moment before she moved. A shift inside her. A line crossed. The thing that made her a nurse and not an obedient instrument. She pushed past Langdon and opened the cart. Drawers clattered. A nurse on the other side of the room said her name in warning. Erin did not stop. She grabbed the epinephrine. She drew it up, hands steady as the world shook. Langdon's voice cut through the room. Erin, do not. She did it anyway. She cleaned the site. She pushed the needle. She delivered the medication like a promise. For a terrifying second, nothing changed. Then Mason gasped, a ragged inhale that turned into a full breath. His shoulders dropped. His eyes found his mother again. Elena sobbed so hard she could barely stay upright. Erin heard the monitor stabilize. The beeping slowed into a rhythm that sounded like life returning. The room exhaled, but Langdon did not. He stared at Erin as if she had committed a crime. Later, when Mason was stable, Langdon pulled Erin aside in the hallway. His voice was low enough to sound controlled, but the anger underneath was sharp. You made me look incompetent, he said. Erin stared at him stunned. I kept him alive, she replied. You made a unilateral decision, Langdon said. You disrespected hierarchy. If something had gone wrong, this hospital would have been exposed. If something had gone wrong, Erin said it would have been because you waited. Langdon's eyes hardened. He stepped closer, close enough that his cologne cut through the smell of antiseptic. Do you think you are above consequence, he asked, because you have been here a long time? Erin looked at him, rain now falling in her memory, as if the sky had always been heavy. I think she said quietly that consequence should belong to the person who chooses paperwork over a pulse. Langdon's face did not change, but something in his gaze did. A decision. A grudge. Now Erin walked in the real rain and realized that moment had never ended. It had simply moved, from the pediatric bay to the HR office to the sidewalk. She crossed in front of a coffee shop where people clustered in warmth windows fogged. The smell of espresso drifted out and vanished. Erin's stomach twisted. She had not eaten. She could not imagine food. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. For a heartbeat, she hoped it was someone from the unit, someone brave enough to say, "This is wrong." It was a notification from her bank. Low balance. She shoved the phone back without looking again. Another block. Then another. The box was heavy, but it was not the worst part. The worst part was the silence that followed her, the knowledge that inside the hospital, the shift would continue without her. Another ambulance would arrive. Another code would be called. Another nurse would glance at the crash cart and remember what happened to Erin Wallace when she acted on instinct. A gust of wind shoved rain under her collar. Erin hunched her shoulders, gripping the box tighter. She turned onto a wider street where the traffic was thicker headlights streaking in the wet. The trolley line was ahead, the stop marked by a glowing sign that looked far away for something so close. Erin lifted her chin and kept walking because walking was the only thing that kept her from stopping. And stopping felt too much like falling. The air tasted of salt and exhaust. Her fingers went numb. The city noise pressed in indifferent and loud. Then somewhere behind the sound of engines and rain, something else began to build. Low, rhythmic, wrong for a city street. a vibration that seemed to come up through the pavement and into her bones. Erin slowed without meaning to. The hairs on her arms rose under wet fabric. She took one more step, and the box bumped against her ribs as if to remind her it was still real, still hers, still all she had left. The vibration grew teeth. It climbed from the pavement into Erin's ankles, then into her ribs, a rhythmic thump that didn't match traffic or construction or thunder. The puddles at the curb shivered in perfect circles. A street sign rattled on its bolts. People slowed heads, turning phones lifting as if the city had agreed on the same instinct at once. Erin stopped near the corner, rain streaming off her hair, the cardboard box pressed tight to her sternum. She looked up into the low clouds and felt that old trauma reflex kick in the part of her that cataloged danger without permission. Sound first, then pressure. The air thickened, pushing against her chest as if the sky itself had leaned down. The roar arrived a heartbeat later, a deep, chopping thunder that drowned out horns and conversation and the distant trolley bell. Clouds tore open. 2 black helicopters dropped through the gray like predators breaking the surface of water. They flew too low for comfort, banking hard over downtown rotor blades, slicing rain into mist. Their matte bodies swallowed the light. No news logos, no bright rescue paint, no friendly hover above a roof. Military. The first helicopter swung into position above the intersection directly over the lanes where cars had been moving seconds ago. The downdraft hit like a punch. Umbrellas snapped. Loose trash spun into the air. A woman screamed and fell to her knees, clutching her head. Drivers slammed brakes, tires, shrieking metal, kissing metal in a chain reaction of panic. Erin did not move. She planted her feet. She squinted through the rain and the debris, watching the pilot work with terrifying precision, lowering the aircraft as if the asphalt were a landing pad designed for it. Skids touched down. Not gently, but clean, a controlled impact that said the person at the controls had done this in places worse than Harbor Drive. The second helicopter hovered above and behind, holding position like a watchdog. Erin caught a glimpse of the open door and the silhouette of a man braced with a long rifle, scanning the rooftops. A city is not supposed to feel small. In that moment, San Diego did. The side door of the landed helicopter slid open before the blades fully settled. 3 men jumped out into the storm. They were not police, not SWAT. Their movements were too practiced, too synchronized, too indifferent to the screaming crowd. Dark tactical gear, plate carriers slick with rain, rifles held close but not raised. No badges, no patchwork of agency branding, just purpose. The man in front did not carry a weapon in his hands. He carried a tablet. He moved like someone counting seconds. His eyes scanned faces fast, dismissing each one without hesitation. He turned in a tight circle, jaw-clenched rain running off the brim of his helmet. Then he shouted, "Where's the nurse?" His voice cut through the rotor wash, harsh and amplified by urgency more than volume. "Trauma nurse, where is she?" People flinched, a few pointed randomly, panic-making fools out of them. A man in scrubs near a coffee shop raised his hands like a surrender and shouted back, "I'm just a med tech." Someone else screamed, "This is a terror attack," and bolted into traffic. Erin felt her pulse thud behind her eyes. The box in her arms seemed to swell, suddenly too big, too obvious. She tried to step back, but the crowd pressed around her, trapped by parked cars and stalled lanes and the sheer shock of seeing a Black Hawk sitting in a downtown intersection. The man with the tablet snapped his gaze across the faces one more time. Then he saw her. Not because she was special, because she looked like the exact thing he needed, and the exact thing nobody else could pretend to be. Soaked scrubs. Hospital badge clipped to her pocket. Cardboard box held like a shield. Eyes that had seen too many bad endings. The man pointed straight at her. He didn't stroll. He sprinted, cutting through the crowd, dodging a stopped taxi boots, splashing through a puddle that reflected the helicopter blades like a broken mirror. Erin's breath hitched. Her mind tried to fill the gap with explanations that made sense. Did Langdon call the police? No. Police do not arrive in Blackhawks. Did she break a law? She saved a child. She was fired for it. Fired, not arrested. The operator closed the distance in seconds. He stopped in front of her chest, heaving rain dripping from his helmet and down the hard lines of his face. Up close, he smelled like wet metal and machine oil and cold air. He stared at her badge, then at her face, then back at the badge like he was verifying a target that mattered. Erin Wallace. Erin swallowed. Her throat felt too tight to make sound. She nodded once. His hand went to his earpiece. Asset located, he said, clipped and immediate. I repeat, asset located. We are at the extraction point. Erin's eyes widened at the word asset. He looked at her, then not unkind, but locked into a mission that didn't have room for comfort. Ma'am, you need to come with us now. Erin's brain stumbled over the sentence like it was foreign. I was just fired. She managed the words tasting like ash. I don't work for the hospital anymore. The operator's jaw tightened. He grabbed her elbow with a firm grip that was more desperate than aggressive. We don't want a doctor, he shouted over the rotors. Erin blinked hard rain stinging her eyes. If you need a doctor, Dr. Langdon is still at Riverside Mercy. He can… We sure as hell don't want Langdon. The operator leaned closer so she could hear him through the roar. His eyes were the color of storm clouds. Intel says you are the trauma nurse who ran pediatric airway rescue courses, he said. You specialize in thoracic trauma. That, correct. Erin felt the world tilt. Yes, she said. But who are you? He didn't answer the question because time was the enemy and introductions were luxury. The president's goddaughter is dying in a secure location, he said. Crushed airway. Secret Service med team can't stabilize her. They asked for the best hands in the region. 3 different surgeons named you. Erin stared at him, rain streaming down her cheeks, like tears she hadn't chosen. The president, she repeated, barely audible. He nodded once. No drama, just fact. We have 4 minutes to get you airborne before she suffocates, he said. Move. Erin's arms tightened around the box. Something in her snapped back to life, that inner voice that demanded details. What's her oxygen saturation? Erin asked, surprising herself with the steadiness of her tone. Is she intubated? The operator blinked at her like he hadn't expected her to switch from shock to clinical in the middle of an intersection. He answered anyway because he needed her in that mode. Low 80s and dropping, he said. They can't pass the tube. Swelling blood deviation. Erin's mouth went dry. Then they need a surgical airway, she said automatically. But pediatric landmarks are hard to find. If you miss, you hit the jugular. She bleeds out fast. The operator's eyes held hers. A flicker of relief crossed his face. Exactly, he said. That's why we came for you. He pulled her toward the helicopter. Erin resisted without thinking, the box shifting in her grip. My husband's picture is in here, she said, voice breaking on the word husband, the grief catching like a hook. The operator did not hesitate. He reached for the box. Erin jerked it back. Don't. His hand closed around it anyway, firm and careful. He tucked it under his arm like a football. Then the box comes too, he said. With his other arm, he lifted Erin, not gently but securely, as if he'd carried injured people through chaos before. He half dragged, half carried her over the wet asphalt toward the open helicopter door. Erin's sneakers skidded. She caught a glimpse of faces in the crowd, open-mouthed phones, raised eyes wide with terror and hunger for a story they could hold. A woman shouted, "Who is she?" A man yelled, "This is insane!" Erin didn't answer. She couldn't. Her world had narrowed to the operator's grip and the open maw of the aircraft. The metal floor of the helicopter was cold and slick. Erin scrambled inside, knees knocking against the diamond plate. The smell hit her first. Fuel, hydraulic fluid, wet canvas, a hint of sweat and gun oil. The noise was physical pressing against her skull. The operator shoved her into a seat and clipped a harness around her with quick, practiced movements. Name, Erin shouted, because her brain needed an anchor. He looked at her, rain streaming down his jaw. Captain Jonah Rourke, he said. Then he slammed the door and barked into his headset. Lift. Now. Punch it. The helicopter surged upward. Erin's stomach dropped like it had been left behind on the street. The city tilted outside the window, skyscrapers sliding sideways through sheets of rain. For a moment, she saw the intersection from above, the scatter of cars, the crowd shrinking into dots. She saw her own life as if it belonged to someone else. Rourke shoved a headset into her hands. "Put it on," he ordered. Erin fumbled it over her ears. The chaos muffled instantly. The roar became a controlled hum, still loud, but manageable. In that sudden pocket of quieter sound, Erin heard her own breathing ragged and fast. Rourke's voice came through the headset clearer now. "I apologize for the extraction method," he said. "We were told you were on shift." Erin swallowed hard. "I was," she said, "until I wasn't." Rourke glanced at her badge, the dead chip still clipped to her pocket like a cruel joke. "We landed on your hospital roof first," he said. "Administrator said you'd been terminated. Tried to send the chief of surgery instead." The name burned. Langdon. Erin's hands curled into fists on her thighs. "He tried to go," she said, disbelief and fury sharpening every syllable. Rourke's mouth twitched. "He tried to board the aircraft," he replied. "Said he was the superior medical authority." Erin imagined it instantly. Langdon's perfect coat, his polished confidence stepping onto the roof as if the helicopter belonged to him. "What happened?" Erin asked. Rourke's eyes flicked toward the open door behind him, where another operator sat strapped in watching the city slide past. Erin could not see his face, only the shape of his helmet and the steady angle of his rifle. Rourke's tone was almost casual when he answered. "My marksman put a laser on his chest," he said. "Told him to sit down." Erin stared. Rourke continued dry as sand. He sat down. A sound rose in Erin's throat before she could stop it. Not laughter exactly. Something hysterical and sharp, edged. The absurdity of it scraped her raw. Langdon, the man who treated every room like his kingdom, forced into obedience by a silent red dot. Erin pressed her lips together until the sound died. "Where are we going?" she asked, voice steadier now. Rourke nodded toward the window. Gray ocean blurred under the rain. Freeway veins of cars crawled below. "Naval Air Station Miramar," he said. "Secure hangar. Air Force One is on the ground nearby. The medical bay is set up off the runway." Erin's heart kicked at the mention of Air Force One. That kind of power always felt distant on television. Safe behind glass. It did not feel distant now. Rourke tapped his tablet and turned it so Erin could see. A vitals display. Oxygen saturation 82 and falling. Heart rate 50 and dropping. A single grainy photo of a child's neck, swollen and bruised purple shadows, bleeding into the collar line. Erin leaned in, eyes narrowing. Her mind shifted fully into that cold focus she knew so well. The part of her that shoved fear and bills and humiliation into a locked room and turned the key. Any attempt at oral intubation, Erin said, is going to tear tissue if her larynx is compromised. They need to stop digging around in her throat. Rourke studied her face like he was watching a machine power up. "They're trying," he said. "They can't see. Blood swelling. The surgeon says he can't find landmarks to cut." Erin's jaw tightened. She did not judge him for being afraid. She judged the situation for demanding bravery on a child. If her trachea is crushed, Erin said, landmarks disappear. You have to feel. You have to trust your fingertips. You have to make the cut where you cannot see. Rourke's gaze held hers. "You can do it," he said, not a question. Erin stared out the window at the rain-smeared skyline. 10 minutes ago, she had been walking toward a trolley stop, thinking about rent. Now, she was strapped into a military aircraft being flown hard over the city because someone important was choking to death. Erin looked back at Rourke. "Tell me the team composition," she said. "Who is at bedside?" Rourke's thumb moved across the tablet. "Secret Service medical detail. Flight surgeon from the air wing. 2 medics," he said. "They have gear. They don't have time." Erin nodded. "Any imaging?" she asked. "No," he replied. "Collapse incident. Structural failure at a private event." She took debris to the neck. "They secured bleeding, but airway is going." Erin's eyes moved over the vitals again. If her oxygen drops into the 60s, she said brain injury begins fast. Rourke's face hardened. "We know." Erin took a slow breath and forced herself to keep it slow. Her body wanted to panic. Her mind refused. Have they tried a bougie? Aaron asked. Have they tried video laryngoscopy? Rourke shook his head. You can talk to them when we land, he said. Right now they're barely holding on. Aaron closed her eyes for a moment and pictured a child's anatomy, the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid ring, the thin membrane that could be the difference between life and death. She pictured Luke's hands calloused from rope and salt water, steady in storms. He used to say, the ocean did not care who you were. It cared what you could do. Aaron opened her eyes. Does the family know? She asked. Rourke's expression softened by a fraction. The president is in the secure area, he said. He's waiting. Aaron's mouth went dry. And they asked for me by name, she said. Yes, Rourke answered. They wanted the nurse. The helicopter banked and the horizon tilted. Aaron felt the pull of gravity shift, pressing her into the seat. Outside, the city gave way to wider spaces. The runway of Miramar appeared through the rain, long and slick lights glowing like beads on a string. Rourke leaned toward her, voice lower now, still urgent. Listen to me, he said. Once we touch down, you stay on my right. You do not stop. You do not answer questions. You do not talk to anyone, unless I say. Aaron nodded once. Rourke glanced down at the cardboard box tucked beside him, held securely between his boot and the seat frame. Your stuff stays with us, he added. No one touches it. Aaron's throat tightened again, but she kept her voice even. Thank you, she said. The helicopter dropped fast. Not a gentle descent. A controlled fall. Aaron's stomach lifted into her ribs as the pilot flared at the last moment. Skids hit wet tarmac with a hard jolt that rattled her teeth. The doors slid open. Sound slammed back in, even through the headset. Rain and wind and the roar of engines. The smell of jet fuel cut sharp through the damp. Rourke was out first, boots hitting the ground before Aaron had fully unbuckled. He reached back and grabbed her elbow. Move, he shouted, though his voice still came clean through the headset. Now! Aaron stepped onto the tarmac. Her sneakers splashed in a puddle that smelled like fuel and rain. Bright lights stabbed through the gloom. The airfield looked like a different world. Massive aircraft loomed in the distance, their hulking shapes half swallowed by weather. A line of dark SUVs formed a perimeter near a hangar with doors open wide, spilling a harsh white light onto the wet ground. Men in black suits moved like shadows between vehicles. Secret Service. Their faces were blank with purpose. Their hands hovered near weapons in that way people do when they live close to violence. Rourke pulled Aaron forward through the corridor of SUVs. The wind shoved at them. The hangar light grew bigger, brighter. Stay close, Rourke barked. Aaron kept her eyes forward. Her mind cataloged the scene without emotion. The perimeter, the angles, the exit points, the way men stood with their shoulders squared, scanning rooftops even in a storm. At the hangar entrance, a wall of Secret Service agents closed ranks. One stepped out, palm raised. He had a buzz cut and eyes that looked like they had forgotten how to blink. An earpiece curled behind his ear like a hook. Hold, he shouted. Rourke did not slow. He tightened his grip on Aaron's elbow. The agent stepped directly into their path. Who is this? He demanded. Rourke's voice snapped back hard as steel. Aaron Wallace, trauma nurse, primary asset. The agent's gaze flicked to Aaron's scrubs, then to her dead hospital badge. The manifest lists Dr. Pierce Langdon, he said. Rourke's jaw clenched. Langdon is not coming near this, he replied. The agent's hand stayed raised. She's a civilian, he said. No clearance. Aaron felt the hangar light on her face warm and unforgiving. She could hear monitors inside, faint but frantic, like a heartbeat calling from behind a door. Rourke took one more step, forcing the agent to give ground or collide. The agent did not move. Captain, he said, voice sharp. Stand down. Rourke's grip on Aaron's elbow tightened, and Aaron, soaked to the bone, smelled blood and antiseptic and fear in the air beyond that doorway, and felt her own focus narrow to a single brutal fact. Somewhere inside, a child was running out of oxygen. Somewhere inside, a child was running out of oxygen. Aaron felt it the way she could feel a code blue before the overhead call finished. the way the air in a room changed when the line between life and death got thin. The agent's raised hand was not a hand anymore. It was a closed door. Behind it, monitors were screaming. She stepped out from Rourke's shoulder, letting the rain hit her face full on. Her scrubs clung to her arms. The cardboard box was still pinned against her ribs, but she lowered it just enough to look the agent straight in the eyes. "Agent," she said, voice steady despite the wind. "What is her oxygen saturation right now?" The agent's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked past her into the hangar like the numbers lived there and were pulling him back. "I do not discuss protected medical information with civilians," he snapped. Erin nodded once, accepting the boundary without flinching. She had navigated boundaries her whole career. She just refused to let them become coffins. "Then answer this," she said. "Is it going up or down?" Rourke leaned in sharp. "Sloan, we do not have time." So that was his name. Agent Sloan. The way Rourke said it carried familiarity and tension, like two men who had worked the same disasters and never agreed on the same priorities. Sloan held his ground. Rain ran down his cheekbones. His eyes were bright and hard. "She has a Secret Service medical team," Sloan said. "A flight surgeon, medics, equipment. If I let an uncleared civilian in and she dies, I own that." Erin's mouth pressed into a thin line. She could hear the beeping more clearly now, the frantic cadence bleeding out of the hangar like a siren. "If you do not let me in," Erin said, "and she dies because her airway cannot be secured, you own that too." Sloane's nostrils flared. Erin kept going, the words crisp, clinical, relentless. Low 80s 5 minutes ago means low 70s now. Low 70s means she is minutes from the 60s. 60s means her brain is starving. That is not a headline. That is physiology. Erin lifted her dead hospital badge slightly. "Search me. Take my phone. Take my shoelaces if you want. But you do not have the luxury of being wrong." Sloane's gaze dropped to the badge, then rose to Erin's face. There was no pleading there, no drama. Just a person who had seen too many children turn blue and knew exactly what it meant. Rourke's voice came through Erin's headset, tight with pressure. "Sloan." For a breath, the wind filled the space between them, pushing rain across the tarmac in sheets. Then Sloane's raised hand lowered. He stepped aside, jaw clenched like a man swallowing a decision that tasted bad. "Go," he said. Erin moved. Rourke moved with her, a shadow at her right shoulder. Two operators fell in behind them, rifles down, eyes up. Erin crossed the threshold into the hangar, and the world changed. Outside was rain and helicopter thunder. Inside was bright artificial light that made everything too sharp. A mobile field hospital had been thrown together in the center of the concrete floor. Portable surgical lamps cast hard circles of white. Cables snaked under boots. A gurney sat in the middle like an altar surrounded by people in military medical fatigues, moving fast and speaking in clipped bursts. Monitors screamed. The pitch of the alarm told Erin the problem before she even saw the numbers. Oxygen low, heart rate falling, a rhythm trying to die. The smell hit her next. Blood. Antiseptic. Hot plastic from equipment running too hard. Jet fuel drifting in from outside. A flight surgeon stood at the head of the bed, sweat shining on his temples despite the cold. Lieutenant Colonel Harris Klein. Erin recognized the posture, the way his shoulders were held rigid, the way his hands moved too quickly. A good clinician drowning in an injury that refused to cooperate. Klein had a laryngoscope in his right hand. His left hand tried to pry open a small mouth. "I cannot get a view," he barked. "There is too much blood." A medic snapped back. "Suction is maxed, sir." Another voice, female, tight with urgency. "Sats are 67. Heart rate 46. Erin reached the bedside and saw the patient. A little girl, 8 or 9, pale under the lights. Her lips were violet. Her eyes were half open but unfocused, like she was already drifting somewhere far away. Her neck was swollen and bruised purple-black, spreading down toward the collarbones in ugly blooms. The skin looked tight, stretched, angry. Erin's breath stopped for half a beat. The injury was worse than a picture, worse than a tablet. Real damage had a presence. Klein leaned closer to the child, fighting for angle. Open, open, he muttered, voice shaking. Aaron looked at the neck again, at the swelling, at the way the tissue bulged in a way it should not. She saw it instantly. Not the exact anatomy, but the story the body was telling. Air under the skin. The puffy crackle at the base of the neck. Subcutaneous emphysema. Tracheal injury. Oral intubation here was not just failing, it was dangerous. Erin stepped into the narrow space at the head of the bed and put her hand on Klein's wrist. "Stop," she said. Klein jerked as if shocked. His head snapped toward her eyes, wild. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. Erin did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her calm cut through the noise like a blade. "Erin Wallace," she said. "Trauma nurse." Klein's face tightened. "A nurse." "A trauma nurse," Erin repeated, and she pointed at the girl's collarbone area. "Feel that." Klein glanced down confused, then pressed 2 fingers into the puffiness. His eyes widened as he felt the crackling under the skin. Erin spoke fast now, not emotional, just precise. Air is leaking into tissue. She has a laryngeal or tracheal disruption. If you keep trying to intubate orally, you will tear what is left and create a false passage. You will lose the airway entirely. Klein's mouth opened, then shut. His hands hovered in the air, suddenly unsure. A medic shouted, "SAT 64. The monitor's tone changed again. Lower. Slower. Klein swallowed hard. "We need a surgical airway," he said. Erin nodded, "Yes." Klein's eyes flicked to the girl's neck and back to Erin. "I cannot find landmarks. The swelling is too severe." Erin leaned closer, eyes on the neck. "Then you have to find them with your fingertips." Klein's voice dropped raw. "If I cut and miss, I hit the carotid or the jugular. And she bleeds out in seconds," Erin finished for him. Klein's shoulders sagged, just a fraction. Erin saw the fear behind the rank, the weight of doing this under national security lights, surrounded by agents and operators, and the knowledge of who this child belonged to. "I cannot do it," Klein whispered. Erin stared at the monitor. Heart rate 43. Oxygen 62. The line between fixable and irreversible narrowing. She stripped off her soaked jacket with one hard pull and tossed it aside. Her scrubs were darker, where rain had soaked through. She snapped on sterile gloves from an open box, without asking permission. "Scalpel," Erin said. Klein stared at her. "You are asking me to let a nurse perform a surgical airway," he said, voice cracking with disbelief and desperation. Erin extended her hand. It did not shake. "You are watching her die," Erin said. "Give me the scalpel." Klein looked at the monitor again. The numbers were falling like stones. He reached for the instrument tray with hands that shook. He placed the scalpel in Erin's palm. The hanger seemed to inhale. Even the Secret Service agents at the perimeter stilled. Even the operators stopped shifting their weight. For a moment, there was only the alarm tone and the wet sound of suction and Erin's breathing inside her headset. Erin leaned over the child. "What is her name?" she asked. A medic answered quickly. "Sophie Hargrove." Erin's eyes flicked up for a beat, then back down. The last name landed like a heavy object. It explained the hangar, the security, the aircraft outside, the men in suits. It explained why they had ripped a nurse off a city street. Erin forced herself to let the name be a name and not a symbol. If Sophie became a symbol in Erin's mind, Erin would hesitate. A symbol was too big to cut. She placed her left hand on Sophie's neck. It felt wrong. Swollen tissue heat bruising. The landmarks were blurred into a soft mass. Erin pressed gently at first, then harder. Her fingers searched for structure under chaos. She closed her eyes for a single beat and pictured anatomy the way she had taught it to residents and medics. Thyroid cartilage, cricoid ring, the membrane between. She opened her eyes and pressed again, firmer, ignoring the way the swollen tissue shifted like a water balloon. "Come on," she thought, not as a prayer, as a command. Her fingertips met something that resisted. A tiny ridge. Hardness amid softness. "There." Erin's voice dropped almost tender. "I have it." Klein leaned in, urgent. "Do not make a vertical incision," he warned. "She will bleed out." Erin did not look at him. "I know," she said. She positioned the scalpel. The lights burned against wet skin. The monitor's beeping slowed again, as if even the machine was losing patience. Aaron made a horizontal cut. Blood welled immediately dark and fast. Suction, Aaron said. A medic moved instantly, placing suction at the incision. The field cleared enough for Aaron to see depth, not detail. She used the back of the scalpel handle to spread tissue. She watched for a white flash of cartilage for a sign that she was where she needed to be, and not drifting toward disaster. Her gloved fingers were steady. Her mind was cold and narrow. The world outside this wound did not exist. Tube, Aaron said. Pediatric, 4.0. Klein's hands fumbled, then produced a small tracheostomy tube. He placed it into Aaron's outstretched hand, like a man handing over his own heartbeat. Aaron guided the tube into the incision. Resistance. The cartilage was damaged, crushed, refusing to open a path. Aaron felt the temptation to push harder, to force it. Force would tear. Force would collapse what remained. Force would kill. She stopped, breathed once. She adjusted her angle and rotated her wrist, a corkscrew motion she had learned from an old trauma surgeon who had once told her, "If it feels like a wall, do not punch the wall, find the door." She rotated again, pressure steady, not brutal. The tube popped through the resistance. Aaron felt the give, the unmistakable sensation of entering the airway. It was not victory. It was access. "Bag her," Aaron shouted. A medic attached a bag valve mask to the tube and squeezed. Nothing. Sophie's chest did not rise. Klein's face twisted. He pressed his stethoscope to the child's chest, moved it quickly, frantic. "No breath sounds," he yelled. "You missed." Aaron's jaw clenched. Her eyes stayed on the tube. "I did not miss," she said. She listened with her own instincts, not a stethoscope. The resistance. The feel of placement. The lack of chest rise did not mean she was wrong. It meant something else was wrong. "It is a plug," Aaron said. "Blood and mucus." She grabbed a suction catheter, threaded it down the tube, and applied negative pressure. The catheter caught. Aaron did not yank. She rotated gentle, then pulled back steadily. A thick clot came out, dark and rubbery, mixed with mucus. Aaron dropped it into a tray without looking. "Bag again," she ordered. The medic squeezed. Sophie's chest rose. A clean, symmetrical rise that made the whole room exhale at once. Klein pressed his stethoscope again, and his face broke. "We have breath sounds," he said, voice cracking. "Bilateral. Good air entry." Aaron looked at the monitor. The oxygen saturation was slow to respond, stubborn, then climbed. 70, 78, 85, 92, 98. The heart rate followed, picking up like a body remembering it had a job to do. The alarm tone changed, shifting from panic to warning to something quieter. The beeping steadied into a rhythm that sounded like permission to breathe. Color returned to Sophie's lips, purple fading to a pale pink that looked miraculous under harsh lights. Aaron realized she had been holding her own breath. She let it out slowly, carefully, as if a sudden exhale might undo the work. She secured the tube with a strap, hands moving automatically, routine returning like muscle memory. Now that the cliff edge was behind them, her fingers began to tremble. Not from fear, from the adrenaline draining out, leaving the body to feel what it had refused to feel. "Sedation," Aaron said. "Paralyze her. Minimize oxygen demand. Keep her still." A medic nodded, already drawing up medication. Klein stared at Aaron like he was seeing her for the first time. "That was," he began, then stopped, swallowing hard. "That was the finest surgical airway I have ever witnessed." Aaron stepped back from the bed and peeled off her gloves. Blood smeared her wrists. Rainwater dripped from her hair onto the concrete. Her legs felt suddenly weak, like her bones had turned to water. She leaned against a metal cart, closing her eyes for a moment. The hangar noise returned, distant now. Voices moved around her, calmer, more ordered. Someone adjusted a drip. Someone checked pupils. Someone called out updated vitals. The language of stabilization. Rourke was at her side, close enough that she could feel his presence without looking. "You good?" he asked through the headset. Aaron opened her eyes. Her vision was sharp, almost too sharp. She saw every reflection, every smear, every drop of blood on the floor. "I am fine," she said, "because that was what you said when you were not allowed to fall apart." Rourke's gaze flicked to the small incision at Sophie's neck, the tube now secure, the bagging steady. "You did it," he said. Aaron's mouth tightened. "We did," she replied, and then she looked past Rourke toward the supply crate where her cardboard box sat. It looked ridiculous under hanger lights, a small civilian object among military steel. The framed photo of Luke was still inside. Dry, she hoped. For a second, Erin felt the full weight of the contrast. 30 minutes ago, she had been fired and pushed out into the rain like trash. Now she was standing in a secure military hangar, having saved a child whose last name could move aircraft and men and roads. And she was still Erin Wallace. Still a nurse. Still the woman with rent due and a car in the shop and a dead badge clipped to her pocket. Klein approached her slowly as if not to spook her. His face was lined with fatigue and relief. He looked like a man who had been close to a mistake he would never recover from. "Where did you train?" he asked. Erin wiped rain and sweat from her forehead with her forearm. "County trauma," she said. "Then Riverside Mercy. A lot of nights where nobody else showed up fast enough." Klein nodded, eyes dropping briefly, absorbing the truth that some competence is forged in neglect. He hesitated, then said, "Thank you." Erin met his gaze. "Do not thank me," she replied. "Keep her alive long enough for reconstruction." Klein turned back to the bed, as if the words had snapped him back to duty. He began issuing orders in a steadier voice, delegating tasks, building a plan. Erin pushed off the cart and walked back to Sophie's side, checking the tube placement, ensuring the strap was secure, watching for air leak under the skin, watching chest rise. She listened for any sign the airway might fail again. A medic looked up at her, eyes wide. "You were really fired today," he said, disbelief thick in his voice. Erin did not answer at first. The question felt too personal for a room where blood was still wet. "Yes," she said finally, "for saving a different kid." The medic shook his head like the world had stopped making sense. A Secret Service agent stepped closer, careful not to crowd the bed. Erin caught his glance toward her dead badge. "You have no privileges here," he said. Not hostile, just stating a reality. Erin looked at him, then at Sophie. "She has a pulse," Erin said. "That is my privilege." The agent held her gaze for a beat, then looked away. The room settled into post-crisis choreography. Monitors were quieter. Orders were calmer. The heavy breathing of panic had turned into the controlled breathing of work. Erin finally let herself bend and pick up her box. The cardboard was damp and soft at the corners. Her fingers left faint red smudges on it. She moved to a quieter corner near a stack of supply crates out of the way, but close enough to see Sophie. She set the box down gently and opened it, checking the frame. Luke's photo was intact. Dry. His smile looked impossibly calm. Erin swallowed and closed the box again. Rourke appeared beside her helmet, still on water dripping off his gear onto the concrete. "They will want to talk to you," he said. Erin's eyes stayed on the field hospital. "They can talk while she breathes," she replied. Rourke nodded, fair. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hangar's bright lights made everyone look pale and slightly unreal. Outside, the rain kept falling against the open doors. A Black Hawk sat on the tarmac like a patient predator, blades finally still. Erin felt the delayed tremor in her hands again. She curled her fingers into fists to quiet it. Klein called out, "Oxygen stable. Blood pressure coming up." The words made Erin's shoulders drop a fraction. A nurse in fatigue stepped toward Erin with a small bundle. A towel, a bottle of water. "Here," she said, gentle. "You are soaked." Erin took the towel. She did not realize how cold she was until she felt fabric against her skin. "Thank you," Erin said. The nurse hesitated. "They said you were a nurse," she murmured, still stunned. "They did not say you were that." Erin almost smiled, but it would not come, not yet. She drank water in small swallows, the cold taste grounding her. She watched Sophie's chest rise and fall. She watched the tube at the child's neck secure. She watched the numbers on the monitor hold steady. The sound of boots approached from the hangar entrance. Not running. Purposeful, measured. The Secret Service agents along the perimeter straightened, subtly, posture shifting like a ripple. Erin's gaze lifted toward the doorway as the room's attention began to tilt, drawn by the weight of someone arriving. She set the water down on the crate beside her box and wiped her hands on the towel, not because anyone demanded it, but because her body was finally remembering she existed outside the wound. The footsteps reached the hangar like a change in weather. Secret Service agents along the perimeter straightened hands folding in front of their bodies, with the same synchronized restraint Aaron had seen in operating rooms right before a surgeon walked in. The murmur of voices softened. Even the portable lights seemed to glare harder, as if the space itself recognized rank without being told. A man entered in a dark windbreaker and jeans moving fast, not because he was in a hurry to perform, but because fear had given him a single destination. He was flanked by men who did not look around the room so much as they controlled it, eyes scanning corners, angles, doors, every place danger liked to hide. President Malcolm Hargrove did not look like a speech. Up close, he looked tired in a way television never captured. Stress carved shallow lines around his eyes. The weight of decisions sat on his shoulders like wet cloth. But when he saw the gurney, his face shifted into something simpler. A man who almost lost a child he loved. He went straight to Sophie. Lieutenant Colonel Klein stepped in, voice formal, steady. "Mr. President, she is stable. Airway secured. Oxygen?" Holding. Hargrove closed his eyes for a moment, shoulders sagging, as if someone had cut a rope, holding him upright. He reached out and touched Sophie's hand, with the careful gentleness of someone who knew power meant nothing against biology. "Thank God," he said, the words barely audible. He looked up at Klein. "They told me you could not get the tube in." Klein swallowed and did not flinch from the truth. "I could not, sir. It was a complex injury. Swelling blood disrupted anatomy." Hargrove's gaze sharpened. "Then who did?" Klein turned his head and pointed to the corner by the supply crates where Erin stood with a towel in her hands and a damp cardboard box at her feet. She felt suddenly too visible, too small in soaked scrubs. She straightened anyway because the moment demanded posture, even if her body wanted to fold. "Nurse Wallace," Klein said. Hargrove walked toward her with quick, decisive steps. The air seemed to pull tight around him, a silent corridor of attention. Aaron met him halfway without thinking, because in trauma you move toward the problem. He stopped in front of her and held out his hand. "Nurse Wallace," he said, voice low, intense. "You saved her life." Aaron took his hand. His grip was warm and firm. Not a politician's handshake, a human one. "Mr. President," Aaron said, and heard how thin her voice sounded against the hangar's hardness. Hargrove's eyes shone with something that looked like rage held in a cage. "Sophie's mother was my closest friend," he said. "I promised her I would protect that girl. If we lost her today—" He cut himself off, jaw tight, as if finishing the sentence would make it real. Aaron nodded once, throat too tight for comfort. Hargrove glanced back at Sophie, then back at Aaron. "Where are you based?" he asked. The question should have been easy. It was the kind of small talk people use to steady themselves after terror. Aaron's gaze dropped to the cardboard box. Luke's photo lived inside it like a pulse she could not feel anywhere else. She imagined him looking at her with that steady expression he always had before a storm. Do not lie to make it easier. Easier is how you drown. "I am not based anywhere," Aaron said quietly. Hargrove blinked. "What do you mean?" Aaron lifted the box a fraction, the wet cardboard bending slightly. "Riverside Mercy fired me today, before the helicopters." The hangar fell into a silence so complete, Aaron could hear the faint tick of a monitor and the soft hiss of oxygen. Hargrove's eyebrows rose, then his face hardened into a different kind of calm. The kind that comes before consequences. "They fired you," he said, voice careful like he was confirming a detail in a report. "Before we called you here." "Yes, sir." "For what?" Aaron inhaled slowly. "For administering epinephrine to a child who was dying. The chief of surgery ordered me to wait while he called risk management and discussed authorization. I did not wait." Hargrove's gaze shifted, cutting to the side where Captain Rourke stood, then back to Aaron. "Who fired you?" Aaron did not hesitate. "Dr. Pierce Langdon." Hargrove's expression sharpened as if someone had flipped a blade open. He turned slightly to a woman behind him with a tablet pressed to her chest, his chief aide. "Call the Secretary of Health and Human Services," he said. "Call the California Department of Public Health. Get me the hospital board chair for Riverside Mercy. Now." The aide's fingers were already moving. Hargrove faced Aaron again, his voice lowered. "You are not going to be unemployed long," he said. "But first, you are going to get warm." He looked at the towel in Erin's hands, the rain still dripping off her hair. "Do you have a change of clothes?" Erin shook her head. "No, sir. This box is all I have." Hargrove's mouth tightened. He placed a hand briefly on her shoulder, a gesture that carried more protection than comfort. "We will fix that." A Secret Service agent stepped in and murmured something in Hargrove's ear. The president listened without breaking eye contact with Aaron. "We are moving," he said. They guided Aaron out through a side corridor within the hangar perimeter, away from the gurney. Sophie remained stable under Klein's watch sedation, ordered hands working in practiced coordination. Aaron watched the child's chest rise and fall for 2 extra breaths before she allowed herself to be pulled away. Outside, the rain continued as if nothing historic had happened. The tarmac reflected the hangar lights in long, white smears. A motorcade idled beyond the perimeter engines, low-armored silhouettes swallowing the night gray of the storm. Aaron climbed into a vehicle that smelled like leather and cold electronics. Someone draped a dark jacket over her shoulders. It was too big. The fabric carried the faint scent of clean laundry and the sterile calm of people who planned for disasters. Her hands still trembled. Not from fear now, from the adrenaline letting go. Captain Rourke stood outside the open door for a moment, rain beating on his helmet. He looked at Aaron with something like respect, and the kind of relief you do not say out loud. "You did good," he said. Aaron met his gaze. "She is alive," Aaron replied. That is all. The door shut. The vehicle moved. Within minutes, Aaron found herself in a different world. Not the hangar, not the street, not the hospital. A secure conference room on board Air Force One, with soft lighting and polished wood that felt almost obscene after blood and rain. A cup of hot tea sat in front of her. Steam rose in slow curls. Aaron wrapped both hands around it and felt warmth seep into her palms. Someone had found her dry clothes, a simple navy set, and she had changed without thinking. Her soaked scrubs were gone, folded into a plastic bag, like evidence. The cardboard box sat at her feet. It looked out of place here, but that was the point. Aaron did not let it leave her reach. President Hargrove sat across from her, with a file open on the table. He read quickly, eyes moving with the efficiency of someone trained to absorb threat. 20 years, he said without looking up. County trauma, Riverside mercy, multiple commendations. Aaron stared at the tea. "I showed up," she said. Hargrove looked up then. "They do not hand out commendations for showing up." Before Aaron could answer, the door opened and the chief aide stepped in. Her face was tight. "Mr. President," she said, "you need to see this." She turned on the monitor on the wall. The screen filled with shaky footage. A downtown intersection. Rain. 2 Blackhawks dropping into the street. People screaming, phones raised. Captain Rourke sprinting through the crowd. Aaron saw herself on the screen, soaked, holding the box like a child holds a life jacket. She looked smaller than she felt. She looked like a person about to be swallowed. Audio crackled through speakers clear enough to make Aaron's skin prickle. "Where's the nurse?" It was Rourke's voice, raw with urgency, echoing off buildings. The footage zoomed in, catching the moment. Rourke reached her, grabbed her elbow, dragged her toward the aircraft. Cables of rain streaked across the camera lens. The video caught the box. It caught her face. It caught everything she had tried to keep private. The aide spoke softly, as if loud words might make it worse. "It is everywhere. News, social. People are asking who you are and why you were standing on a street corners with a box of personal belongings in the middle of the day." Aaron felt heat rise in her face. She had never wanted to be known. She wanted to work. She wanted to go home. She wanted to keep her head down and keep people alive. Being seen like this felt like exposure. The aide clicked again. The screen switched to a live press feed. Riverside Mercy Hospital lobby. A podium with the hospital logo behind it. Bright lights. Microphones clustered like a bouquet. Reporters packed shoulder to shoulder. Dr. Pierce Langdon stood at the podium in a crisp white coat, expression grave the practiced mask of concerned leadership. Diane Caldwell stood beside him, hands folded, eyes on a fixed point in the distance. Langdon began speaking, voice smooth. We are aware of the dramatic footage involving a former employee, Aaron Wallace. It is a regrettable situation. Aaron's grip tightened around the teacup. Langdon continued. Ms. Wallace was terminated earlier today for concerning conduct. While I cannot share details due to privacy regulations, I can state her actions endangered patient safety. We observed signs of instability. Erin's chair scraped backward as she stood so fast it nearly toppled. The tea sloshed. Her breath came sharp. Instability, she said, the word cracking open in her mouth. On screen, Langdon held his hands up in a placating gesture. We believe the military may have been acting on outdated information when they extracted her. A reporter shouted, Doctor, can you confirm the military operation was related to a patient at your hospital? Absolutely not, Langdon said without missing a beat. Riverside Mercy is operating normally. Ms. Wallace no longer provides care in this facility. We hope she receives the help she needs. Erin's vision narrowed. It was not just her job. It was her name, her license, the trust people gave her when they placed their bodies in her hands. Langdon was trying to poison all of it before the truth could touch it. He is going to win, Erin said, voice low, more fear than she wanted to admit. He has the board. He has lawyers. I am nobody. President Hargrove stood and walked to the monitor, watching Langdon speak as if he were studying a hostile briefing. His expression did not change, but Erin saw something in his eyes go hard. You are not nobody, Hargrove said. You are the person who saved Sophie. I do not enjoy being lied to, and I do not enjoy watching someone destroy the person who saved my family. The aide glanced at a clock on her tablet. He is taking questions. There is a schedule. They will be live for at least 20 minutes. Hargrove's mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. Good. Erin's pulse jumped. Sir, she began, unsure what she was asking for, unsure what she wanted. Hargrove looked at her. Get your box, he said. Erin picked it up, holding it to her chest. The wet cardboard felt softer now, but the weight inside it was the same. Hargrove buttoned his jacket. We are going to Riverside Mercy, he said. Erin stared. Why? Hargrove's voice was calm. Because he is speaking into cameras. And I am standing here listening. They moved quickly. Security shifted. Doors opened. The hum of the aircraft changed as arrangements were made. Erin followed in a daze, escorted down bright corridors and metal stairs, through the smell of jet fuel and rain into the waiting motorcade. The ride to the hospital cut through San Diego streets that had been reshaped by sirens and traffic control. Intersections shut down. Police motorcycles moved like arrows, clearing lanes. Erin watched city lights smear on wet windows and felt the strange unreality of traveling with power while still feeling like the same person who had been walked out of a hospital an hour ago. Riverside Mercy appeared ahead, its glass front glowing bright and sterile against the storm. The press atrium was lit like a stage. Inside, Dr. Langdon was still at the podium. He was enjoying the spotlight. Erin could see it in the way he paused for effect, the way he let questions build suspense so he could answer them with practiced authority. It is never easy to let a staff member go, Langdon said, voice dripping with faux compassion. But medicine requires precision, not vigilantism. A reporter pushed. If she was fired, why did the military want her? Langdon gave a small shrug. Confusion in a chaotic moment. They likely grabbed the first person in scrubs. Diane Caldwell nodded beside him like an echo. Erin stood just outside the atrium doors with Hargrove and his detail. She could hear every word through the glass. Her stomach twisted. One of the agents opened the door. The sound of the crowd hit them instantly, a thick wall of voices, camera shutters, and the electric buzz of people sensing drama. But that buzz shifted the moment the room noticed the Secret Service. Heads turned, conversations stuttered, phones lifted. Two agents entered, first scanning clearing space. Reporters stepped back instinctively, creating a lane down the center of the atrium. Cameras swung away from Langdon toward the entrance. Langdon faltered mid-sentence. His eyes narrowed, annoyed by the interruption. Then he saw the man walking in. President Malcolm Hargrove entered with calm stride, not rushing, not performing, simply arriving. Erin walked at his side, still holding her cardboard box. The room erupted. Flashbulbs burst like lightning. Voices rose, overlapping. "Mr. President, is that the nurse? Dr. Langdon, is that her?" Langdon gripped the podium with both hands. The knuckles whitened. His face had gone pale beneath the bright lights. Diane Caldwell took a small step back, as if distance might save her. Hargrove walked straight to the podium. Langdon did not move. He looked trapped by his own stage. "Excuse me," Dr. Hargrove said into the microphone Langdon had been using. His voice carried without effort. "I believe you are standing where I need to stand." Langdon stumbled backward, nearly catching his foot on a cable. "Mr. President, I did not know, we were not informed this is highly unusual." Hargrove did not answer him. He adjusted the microphone and faced the cameras. The atrium fell into a silence so sudden it felt like someone had cut the sound. "My fellow Americans," Hargrove said, voice even. "I apologize for interrupting this press conference. I was watching from Air Force One, and I felt compelled to correct the record." He turned slightly and gestured to Erin. "Dr. Langdon has just told you Nurse Erin Wallace was terminated for instability," Hargrove said. "He has implied she is a danger. He has suggested the military made a mistake." Hargrove paused, letting the stillness stretch. The kind of pause that forces people to listen. "The truth," he continued, "is that earlier today, my goddaughter Sophie Hargrove suffered catastrophic trauma to her airway. The best clinicians on site could not stabilize her. We requested Nurse Wallace by name because she has specialized experience in pediatric airway rescue." A collective inhale swept the room. Hargrove's eyes moved to the cameras. When she arrived, she did not assist. She performed the life-saving airway procedure that secured Sophie's breathing. Erin felt the room's attention slam into her. It was heavy, almost physical. She kept her face still, but her heart hammered. Hargrove's voice tightened, and she did it within an hour of being fired by Dr. Langdon. He turned his head and looked directly at Langdon. Why was she fired? Langdon's mouth opened. No sound came out at first. Hargrove faced the cameras again. Because she saved another child's life against Dr. Langdon's orders. She administered emergency medication to an 8-year-old experiencing anaphylaxis while Dr. Langdon delayed for administrative reasons. The reporters snapped toward Langdon. The silence is shattered. "Doctor, is that true? Did you fire her for saving a patient? Did you call her unstable?" Langdon raised his hands, trying to regain the room. "There are complexities. Liability concerns. Protocol. We cannot have staff acting independently in critical moments. That is how mistakes happen." Erin heard her own voice before she realized she was speaking. "Mason Rivera was dying," Erin said. The room pivoted again, microphones angling toward her. Erin's throat tightened, but she forced the words out clean. "He was 8 years old," she continued. "He could not breathe. His mother was begging. Dr. Langdon was on the phone talking about authorization. I gave the epinephrine because there was no time." Langdon snapped the mask, slipping. "This is absurd. I am the chief of surgery. I determine the fitness of my staff." Hargrove's gaze sharpened. "Actually," he said, "your fitness is not determined by your title." He turned to his right. Agent Sloan. Sloan stepped forward from the perimeter, holding a manila envelope. Erin recognized him from the hangar. His expression was the same, controlled, but his eyes briefly flicked to Erin with something like acknowledgement. Sloan handed the envelope to Hargrove. Hargrove opened it with slow precision. "While I was in transit, Hargrove said I requested an emergency review of Riverside Mercy's recent billing and compliance records through appropriate federal and state channels. It appears there are discrepancies that warrant immediate investigation." Langdon's face tightened. "Mr. President, this is inappropriate. This is a hospital, not a political prop." Hargrove's voice did not rise. It did not need to. "This is a hospital," Hargrove said, "which is why patient care should not be subordinate to paperwork and ego." He turned slightly and looked at Diane Caldwell. "Ms. Caldwell," Hargrove said, "I understand the board chair is currently on the phone." Diane's mouth opened and closed, her eyes darted like a trapped animal. Then she nodded too quickly. She reached into her folder with hands that trembled and pulled out a document. Dr. Langdon. Diane said, voice shaking, effective immediately. The board has voted to suspend your clinical privileges pending investigation. You are to be escorted from the premises. For a fraction of a second, Langdon did not react. It was as if the sentence did not compute. Then his face flushed red. You cannot do this, he hissed. I built this program. My donors fund half this wing. The reporters surged forward hungry. Doctor, are you under investigation? Were you lying? What about the nurse? Langdon looked around wildly, searching for allies. Diane stared at the paper like it was a life raft. From the back of the room, a familiar figure stepped forward. Cal Johnson, the security guard who had walked Aaron out, appeared with a small, empty cardboard box in his hands. Aaron saw his wide grin and felt a strange ache in her chest, the kind that comes when justice looks simple for one clean second. Cal held the box out toward Langdon. I believe you know the way out, Dr. Cal said. The crowd erupted into a chaos of sound. Flashbulbs popped, reporters shouted. Cameras tracked every twitch of Langdon's face as his confidence collapsed into something smaller. Langdon grabbed the box with stiff hands. For the first time, Aaron saw him without his armor. Not humbled, not remorseful, just exposed. Hargrove stepped away from the podium and placed a hand lightly on Aaron's back, guiding her out of the crush of microphones. Get her, space and agent ordered. They moved Aaron through a corridor that opened like a wound through the crowd. She could still hear the shouting behind her, the questions, the anger, the glee of people watching a fall. In a quieter hallway just beyond the atrium, Aaron stopped. Her breath came shallow. The adrenaline of the confrontation began to drain, leaving behind a tremor that shook her hands harder than before. She still held her cardboard box, the damp edges bent under her grip. It felt like proof that she had not imagined any of this. Hargrove turned to her. His expression softened slightly, the dangerous edge easing just enough for gratitude to show again. You did not deserve what they did, he said. Aaron's throat tightened. I did not do it for gratitude, she replied. I did it because he was dying. Hargrove nodded once, as if the simplicity of that truth was the only thing keeping him from fury. An aide stepped in with a phone pressed to her ear, whispering updates. Sophie remained stable. Transfer arrangements were underway. Specialized pediatric surgeons had been notified. The words landed in Aaron's body like a slow release of pressure. Aaron closed her eyes for a moment and pictured Sophie's chest, rising the tube, secure the monitor steady. When she opened her eyes, Cal Johnson stood a few feet away, not close enough to intrude, close enough to be seen. He looked at Aaron with a mix of relief and disbelief. You all right? He asked. Aaron tried to answer and found her voice wavering. She cleared her throat. I am here, she said. Cal nodded. I saw you on the news, he said. I thought I was losing my mind. Aaron's mouth twitched into something that was almost a smile. You are not. Hargrove's detail tightened around them, ready to move. Aaron realized she was still wet inside, even in dry clothes. Some storms do not leave your skin when you change shirts. Hargrove looked down at Aaron's box. Do you have somewhere to go tonight? He asked. Aaron hesitated. Her apartment was real. Her bills were real. But the question sounded bigger than logistics. It sounded like a door opening. I have a home, Aaron said. If I can still afford it. Hargrove's gaze held hers. That will be handled, he said simply. He turned slightly, speaking to an aide in a low voice, about resources counsel and protective detail for Aaron, because her name was now public and the world was not kind to people who become symbols. Aaron listened without speaking. She felt hollowed out by the day, but beneath the exhaustion was a hard core of clarity. The truth was finally in the open. That did not mean it would be easy. It meant it would be real. They escorted Aaron back toward a side exit, away from the cameras, the hallway quiet, except for distant shouts echoing through the atrium. Rain tapped against the glass doors at the end of the corridor. Aaron paused as she reached the threshold and looked back once, not at Langdon, not at the reporters, but at the hospital itself. The building glowed bright and indifferent, the same place that had thrown her out and then tried to bury her name. She tightened her grip on the box, feeling the frame inside shift slightly. Outside, the rain waited patient as ever. Erin stepped into it again, but this time she was not alone in the storm. The rain hit Erin's face again, cold and honest, but a black umbrella opened above her before it could soak her hair. An agent she did not know stepped in close, shielding her from the downpour with the same practiced precision nurses used to shield an incision from contamination. "Head down," the agent said, not unkindly. "We are moving." Erin tightened her grip on the cardboard box and walked with the detail through a side corridor and out into the slick sheen of the service driveway. The noise of the press atrium faded behind concrete walls, replaced by the low hum of idling engines and the distant wail of sirens redirecting traffic. A vehicle door opened. Erin slid inside. Leather seats, dark glass, the kind of quiet that felt engineered. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with stiff fingers and saw a voicemail notification from an unknown number. Another from a number she recognized but had not expected to see again. Elena Rivera, Mason's mother. Erin stared at the name for a long second, then pressed play. Elena's voice came through shaky and breathless. "Nurse Wallace, Erin, I do not know if this is your number still. They told me you got fired. I saw something online. A helicopter. I do not understand, but I know you saved my son. I am coming to the hospital board. I will say it. I will say what you did. Please call me back." Erin swallowed hard. She set the phone down on her knee as the vehicle began to move tires, whispering over wet asphalt. Across from her, President Hargrove sat with a phone to his ear, speaking in a low voice that carried no theatrics. Erin caught fragments. Board council. Immediate suspension. State review. Patient records preserved. He ended the call and looked at Erin with the steady attention of someone who had decided her safety was now part of his responsibility. "You will have counsel," he said. "You will have protection for as long as you need it." Erin nodded once. Her voice came out quiet. "I just want to go home." "You will," Hargrove said, "not alone." They drove through downtown, where the rain blurred neon signs into soft color. Erin watched pedestrians hurry under awnings, unaware of how close they had come to seeing tragedy land in an intersection. The day had stretched her sense of time until it felt elastic, snapping between moments. The HR office, the street, the hangar, the podium. Each one felt like a different life. At a secure location near the base, Erin sat in a small office while a physician checked her vitals with a gentleness that felt out of place after the force of the day. Someone brought her food. She took 2 bites before her stomach refused. She drank water instead, hands still trembling, the adrenaline refusing to fully release its grip. An attorney introduced herself, a calm woman with tired eyes and a notebook already filled with facts. She asked Erin to describe the pediatric bay, the timing, the order to wait, the epinephrine administration. Erin spoke slowly, choosing words like she was charting. Date, time, dose, symptoms, response, witnesses. She gave names, she gave details. The attorney wrote without interrupting. Later, Erin called Elena Rivera back. Elena answered on the first ring, voice breaking. "I am sorry," Elena said, the words tumbling out. "I am so sorry. They treated you like you did something wrong." Erin closed her eyes, hearing Mason's gasp in her memory, the sound of air returning. "He is alive," Erin said. "That is what matters." "He keeps talking about you," Elena said. "He said you were like a soldier, but with a stethoscope." Erin's mouth tightened. She looked down at the cardboard box by her chair. "Tell him I am proud of him," she said. "Tell him he did the hard part." He kept fighting. Elena sniffed. "I will," she whispered, "and I will tell the truth." The night ended the way trauma nights often ended. Not with closure, but with exhaustion. Erin lay on a cot in a secure room and stared at the ceiling until sleep took her in a hard, sudden drop. She dreamed of rotors and alarms and Luke's hands steadying a rope in storm surf. In the weeks that followed, cameras stayed hungry. They waited outside buildings. They chased statements. They dug for old photos. Erin learned how quickly a person could become a story the world felt entitled to own. She also learned what it meant to be surrounded by people who did not flinch when that hunger turned sharp. When she returned to her apartment, a plain car sat down the street with two agents inside, faces mostly hidden. They did not speak to her. They simply stayed. Erin carried her box upstairs and set it on the kitchen table like it belonged there. She pulled out Luke's photo and propped it against the wall. His smile watched her boil water for tea with shaking hands. At Riverside Mercy, the atmosphere changed the way it changed during a mass casualty when everyone realized the rules had shifted. Executives who once walked with swagger began walking faster, quieter. Lawyers moved through hallways with folders. A few staff members who had avoided Erin's eyes in the trauma ward called her. Not all of them spoke bravely, but their voices carried relief as if someone had finally cut the wire of fear. Cal Johnson called her too. "I keep thinking about that box," he said, voice rough. "I did not like giving it to you. I did not have a choice." Erin held the phone at her ear and stared at rain streaking her window. "You did what you could," she said. Cal exhaled. "People are talking now," he said. "The nurses. They are not whispering anymore." Erin closed her eyes. She pictured the triage desk, the crash cart, the silence in the hallways. "Good," she said. She did not add anything else. Good was enough. Sophie was transferred to a pediatric specialty team that night. Erin received updates through a secure channel, clinical and brief. Airway stable. Sedation maintained. Reconstruction planned. Erin read the messages and felt the tightness in her chest ease fraction by fraction like a knot slowly learning it could loosen. Months passed. The storm of attention softened into waves. Erin returned to work, but not as a person slipping quietly into a shift. She returned with a new badge and a new role, one that put her at the center of decisions instead of at the edge of consequences. The first day she walked into the trauma bay again, her shoes squeaked on the polished floor, and she smelled antiseptic and coffee, and the faint electric tang of defibrillator pads. It felt like coming back to the only place her body had ever truly understood. A year later, the sky over San Diego was clear and bright, the kind of day that made the ocean look like blue glass. A white tent stood in the renovated courtyard of what used to be Riverside Mercy's old trauma entrance. The hospital sign had been replaced. The new letters were warm and understated. The Erin Wallace Center for Pediatric Trauma Care. Erin stood under the tent in a crisp white coat. She hated how formal it felt. She missed scrubs, but the embroidery on her chest had been done carefully, gold thread, catching sunlight. Erin Wallace, RN Director of Trauma Operations. She smoothed the front of the coat once, then let her hands fall. They did not tremble today. A small voice spoke from her left. "You look like you want to run." Erin turned and saw Mason Rivera in a button-down shirt that kept trying to escape his tucked-in waistband. His hair was neatly combed in a way only a mother could achieve. He held a cookie in his hand like it was contraband. Erin crouched to his height. "I do not run," she said. Mason grinned. "You should." Everybody is staring. Erin looked past him. The crowd filled the courtyard. Nurses in scrubs stood shoulder to shoulder, faces open proud. Doctors mingled without their usual protective distance. A cluster of military personnel stood near the front, posture formal, even in daylight. Cal Johnson stood at the edge of the group in a new uniform that fit him better. His shoulders squared with something like dignity. He caught Erin's eye and lifted a thumb. In the front row sat President Hargrove, smiling like a man who had carried worry for too long and finally set it down. Sophie sat beside him, older, now hair pulled back, eyes bright. A thin scar traced her neck, clean and pale. Erin felt her throat tighten and forced herself to breathe. Mason leaned closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "Tell them the helicopter part," he whispered. Erin's mouth twitched. "Everyone knows the helicopter part." Mason shrugged, "Still the best part." The announcer spoke Erin's name into a microphone. Applause rose, not polite, but full, the kind that vibrated in the chest. Erin stood her body moving on instinct and walked toward the podium. As she stepped up, she glanced out toward the sidewalk beyond the courtyard gate, toward the street where traffic moved calmly. She could not see the intersection where the Blackhawks had landed, but she could feel it in her bones, the ghost of rotor wash the moment the world had turned and found her. Erin placed her hands on the podium. The wood was warm from the sun. She began to speak voice steady, not because she was fearless, but because she had spoken through worse noise than applause. Her eyes moved across the faces in front of her. Nurses who no longer looked away. Staff who stood straight. A child she had saved and another child she had saved both alive and watching. When the ceremony ended and the crowd began to loosen into conversations, President Hargrove approached Erin with an easy warmth that still carried authority like a shadow. "You built something here," he said. Erin shook her head slightly. "They were ready," she replied. "They just needed room." Hargrove smiled and reached into his jacket pocket. "Captain Rourke asked me to give you this." He handed her a small velvet box. Erin opened it and saw a patch inside. Black helicopter silhouette. White lettering. "We don't want the doctor. We want the nurse." Erin's fingers closed around it carefully as if it might crumble. Hargrove watched her face. "He said you kept your head when everyone else was losing theirs." Erin swallowed. "Tell him thank you," she said. Hargrove nodded once and stepped back as agents guided him away. The courtyard began to empty. Nurses hugged each other. Mason chased a friend toward the cookie table. Sophie waved at Erin, then was pulled into a conversation with someone who looked like a proud aunt. Erin stood alone for a moment, under the tent, the patch in her pocket Luke's photo in her mind. Sunlight warmed her shoulders. She breathed in the clean air and let the sound of ordinary life settle around her. Then she turned toward the hospital doors. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed familiar and imperfect. The smell of antiseptic greeted her like an old companion. Erin pushed through the entrance and walked down the corridor toward the trauma bay white coat moving around her knees. A nurse at the desk looked up. "Director Wallace," she began. Erin lifted a hand gently. "Erin," she said. The nurse nodded, a quick smile flickering. Erin stepped into the trauma bay and felt the room meet her the way it always had, ready loud, with quiet urgency. A monitor beeped somewhere down the hall. A gurney rolled past. Voices called out vitals. Erin's hands rose without thinking, already preparing, already steady. She had a shift to start.